The fat billionaire everyone avoided. Until an elegant woman saw his heart. They called him the billionaire nobody wanted. Rich, kind, and full of humor, Benjamin had everything money could buy except love. His size and looks made people whisper about him, stare at him, and make mean jokes. Women who stayed around him only wanted his money, never his heart. But fate had other plans. One normal trip to the grocery store would lead him to Camila, a woman whose laughter changed everything. What started as a simple meeting soon turned into a love story that went beyond looks, stopped gossip, and proved that true beauty lives far deeper than what the eyes can see. The billionaire nobody wanted was not the bad guy in the stories people whispered about him. He was not mean, not stuck up, not full of himself. In truth, he was a man who had a heart bigger than his wealth, though the world rarely cared to notice. Benjamin Maddox, that was his name. At 35, he was one of the richest men in the city. His empire reached from tall hotels to shipping companies, and his name was written across skyscrapers, like a crown on glass. He was rich, kind-hearted, and full of fun. Yet most people only saw the outside, the heavy body that stretched his nice suits. The round face with features some called ugly. The facial expressions that others said were scary or strange. Benjamin laughed often, but even his laughter was misunderstood. The sparkle in his eye was missed because people preferred to see the bulge of his chin, the rolls of his waist, the way he moved with heaviness in his step. Women especially turned away. Some smiled politely, but when they stayed, it was not for his humor or his kindness. It was for his wealth. He saw it in their eyes, the way they measured his money rather than his heart. Loneliness followed him like a shadow. At big parties and golden halls, he was surrounded by people. Yet he was never truly with them. Fake friends stayed for contracts and favors. Women tried to charm him with soft voices, but only until they got a necklace or a car. People often whispered, "Will Benjamin Maddox ever get married? If he does, surely it will be to someone desperate for money." Benjamin heard those whispers. He carried them silently, though he never showed his pain. On the outside, he stayed cheerful, cracking jokes at board meetings, making even his workers laugh with funny faces, and acting with humor that kept his loneliness hidden. It was on a normal Thursday morning, in the bright lights of a busy grocery store, that fate decided to play a different tune for him. Benjamin was never the type to send helpers for everything. Sometimes he liked doing his own shopping. It grounded him, made him feel like a regular man rather than a billionaire in glass towers. On that morning, he pushed a silver cart down the aisles, humming to himself as he reached for items he probably didn't even need. In the cereal aisle, where colorful boxes lined the shelves like painted soldiers, it happened. He stretched his arm out to grab the last box of Honey Crunch Delight, only to notice another hand reaching for the exact same box. Their fingers stopped just short of touching. Benjamin blinked. The hand beside his was delicate with neatly polished nails. He turned, and for the first time in years, he felt his breath catch. Beside him stood a woman unlike anyone he had expected to meet that day. She was stunning. Her skin a deep glowing brown, shining under the store lights. Her hair was neatly styled, falling softly around her face. She wore an elegant dress that showed good taste, rather than showing off. And her posture showed quiet confidence. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Benjamin pulled his hand back gently. "You should take it," he said, his voice kind but firm. "Ladies first." The woman smiled politely and shook her head. "No, you can have it. I'll find something else. That looks like the last one." He looked at the box again, then back at her. "Well, looks like fate wants us to fight for breakfast." She chuckled softly. But before either could reach again, Benjamin picked the box and set it back on the shelf. "There," he declared, brushing his hands dramatically. "Now neither of us wins." The woman blinked in surprise, then burst into laughter, a warm musical sound that filled the aisle. Benjamin grinned widely. It wasn't often that someone laughed at his jokes without forcing it. "You're ridiculous," she said, shaking her head. "Guilty as charged," he replied, putting his hands up as though surrendering. "But I take pride in ridiculousness. Life's too short to be serious all the time." From there, conversation flowed easily. They walked down the aisles, picking items while making small remarks. Benjamin exaggerated his struggles with reading labels, acting like a dramatic chef choosing ingredients. She laughed again when he held up a watermelon and asked, "Do you think this one whispers secrets to the fridge at night?" Her laughter was real, rolling from her chest freely. Benjamin felt something unusual stir inside him, a lightness he hadn't felt in years. She wasn't looking at him with pity or planning. She was just enjoying the moment. When they reached the checkout, both carts were filled. They paid separately, and as they prepared to leave, Benjamin hesitated. His heart beat fast, an odd nervousness clawing at him. "Do you shop here often?" he asked carefully, trying not to sound desperate. She adjusted the strap of her handbag. "Yes, usually twice a week. Mondays and Thursdays." Benjamin's face lit up, though he tried to hide it under a casual smile. "Ah, a routine shopper. Good to know. Maybe I'll see you around again." She gave him a polite nod, then walked away. That evening, the woman, Camila, thought of the meeting briefly. Not because she had met a billionaire, she didn't even recognize him as one, but because he had made her laugh so hard in a grocery store aisle. By bedtime, she dismissed it with a smile and thought no more of it. For Benjamin, however, the memory stayed like a song stuck in his head. Her laughter replayed in his ears, echoing through the quiet halls of his penthouse. For once he had spoken freely without suspicion, without someone pretending to like his jokes. He had been himself and she had laughed. He couldn't stop thinking about it. The following Monday, Benjamin drove himself to the grocery store. His heart pounded as he walked the aisles, glancing around carefully. He searched the cereal aisle, the fruit section, even the bakery corner. But Camila wasn't there. He drove home disappointed. On Thursday, he tried again. This time, his heart leaped when he spotted her gracefully pushing a cart near the fruit section. He forced himself to act casual, picking up oranges as though his presence was purely by chance. When she looked up and noticed him, her eyes widened slightly, then softened with recognition. "Oh, it's you again. Fancy seeing you here," he said with a grin, holding up an orange like a prized treasure. "Apparently the universe thinks we should shop together." Camila laughed, shaking her head. "Or you just really like this grocery store." "Guilty again," he said, winking. They moved through the aisles together, talking casually. Again, his humor lit up her laughter. When she teased him for being too dramatic about choosing pasta shapes, he said, "Every spaghetti strand has a destiny. We just can't break it." By the time they reached checkout, the atmosphere between them was lighter, more familiar. Benjamin gathered his courage. "Would you mind exchanging contacts?" he asked, voice steady but hopeful. Camila studied him for a moment, then smiled. "Sure." They swapped numbers. Benjamin tried not to show his excitement, but inside his heart was roaring like fireworks. That night he sent her a simple message. "Made it home safe. Though I think I left half my jokes in the store." She laughed when she read it. "Don't worry, the cleaners will pick them up." From then their conversations flowed, light, funny, real. Days later, Benjamin invited her to dinner. She accepted, and when they met at a quiet restaurant, laughter once again filled the air. For Benjamin Maddox, the billionaire nobody wanted, something had shifted. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about who judged him or who might use him. He was simply enjoying being himself with Camila, and that was enough to change everything. Benjamin and Camila's connection grew like a flame fed by gentle winds. What had begun as chance meetings in a grocery store now blossomed into regular dinners, phone calls that stretched late into the night, and moments of laughter that seemed to stay even after they parted. Benjamin had never known such freedom with anyone before. Around Camila, he didn't feel the weight of his fortune pressing between them, nor did he feel the suspicion of being judged for what he could give. He was simply Benjamin, a man who loved to tell silly jokes, a man who exaggerated his gestures to make her laugh, a man who could admit when he had no clue how to cook pasta without it sticking together. Their dinners became frequent. At first they chose quiet restaurants where he wouldn't be recognized. Later, Camila encouraged him to stop hiding. "Why do you worry so much about people seeing us?" she teased once as they shared dessert. Benjamin hesitated, tapping his spoon against the plate. "Because people, they don't always understand. They'll look at you and then look at me and wonder what's wrong with you." She reached across the table and touched his hand. "Benjamin, let them look. I'm laughing. I'm happy. That's what matters." Those words lit something inside him. He began to relax. He felt like himself again. Felt self that hadn't been allowed to breathe for years, but outside their bubble of joy the whispers grew. People noticed them together. They saw her beauty, her elegance, her effortless grace. And then they saw him, large-bodied, round-faced, a man often mocked behind his back. Rumors spread like wildfire. "She'll leave him soon, just wait. She's only there for the money. No woman like that would ever stay with him." Benjamin heard the whispers but tried not to show how they hurt him. Camila, on the other hand, brushed them off. When he mentioned the rumors during one of their drives, she rolled her eyes. "People always talk," she said. "They'll keep talking whether we're together or not. I'd rather laugh with you than waste my time worrying about gossip." Her words were firm, but her eyes were warm. And so, despite the voices around them, Camila did not leave. Instead, she leaned in closer, finding joy in his humor, honesty, and warmth. If the public whispered, Camila's mother shouted. From the moment she learned of Benjamin, her disapproval was loud and never-ending. She could not accept the idea that her only daughter, elegant and glowing, would tie herself to a man like him. His size, his face, his presence. To her it was shameful. "You are too beautiful, too refined, too good for this," her mother insisted one evening. "A man like that will only drag you down. What will people say when they see you with him? You'll become a laughingstock." Camila's father was more quiet. He listened silently as his wife complained, his brows drawn in concern. Finally, she turned to him. "You must go and speak to him," she demanded. "Tell him to leave her, warn him." "This relationship will not stand." Reluctantly, he agreed. So one afternoon, Camila's father arranged to meet Benjamin privately at his office. Benjamin welcomed him with warmth, offering a firm handshake and his usual wide smile. "I'm honored you came by," Benjamin said sincerely. "Camila speaks so highly of you." Camila's father sat, rehearsing in his mind the speech he was meant to deliver. "Tell him to stay away. Tell him he is not suitable. Tell him it cannot work." But the words refused to leave his tongue. Benjamin began to speak. He didn't boast about his wealth, nor did he try to defend himself. Instead, he spoke with kindness, humor, and honesty. He talked about how much he enjoyed Camila's laughter, how she made him feel alive, how he had never known such peace with anyone else. "I know what people say about me," Benjamin admitted, his eyes soft. "I know how I look. I've lived my life hearing it. But your daughter doesn't treat me like a joke. She treats me like a man, and all I want is to give her the same honesty she's given me." Camila's father sat silently, staring at him. He had come to warn him away, but as the minutes passed, he began to understand why his daughter was drawn to this man. He was nothing like the shallow suitors who had hovered around her before. He was genuine. By the end of their conversation, the father could no longer say the words his wife had demanded. Instead, he shook Benjamin's hand again. "You're a good man," he said quietly. "I see why she stays." When he returned home, his wife demanded answers. But all he said was, "I'll not interfere. Let her be happy." One evening, over dinner at a rooftop restaurant with city lights twinkling beneath them, Camila opened up. The air was cool, the music soft, and Benjamin was making her laugh about his disastrous attempt to cook steak at home. "Benjamin," she said suddenly, her laughter fading into thoughtfulness, "can I tell you something?" "Of course," he said, setting down his fork. She sighed. "I've been through so many failed relationships. Do you know why?" He shook his head gently. "Because every man I've been with only saw my father's wealth. They looked at me and saw dollar signs. I was never enough on my own. It was always about what they could gain." Her voice shook slightly, but she pressed on. "I'm the only child. I'll inherit everything one day. And men, they see that. They try to charm me, to flatter me, but it always ends the same. They wanted my future, not me." Benjamin listened quietly, his chest tightening with sympathy. "But you," she said softly, her eyes meeting his, "you don't treat me like that. You don't want anything from me. You just make me laugh, and that means more to me than anything else." For a long moment they sat in silence, the city buzzing far below them. Then Benjamin reached across the table and took her hand. "Camila," he said, his voice low but steady, "I don't need your wealth. I've got enough of my own to drown in. What I need is your smile. That's what I can't buy." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of relief. In that moment, something shifted between them. It was no longer just about laughter and dinners. It was about trust, about two people who had been judged wrongly in different ways finding comfort in each other's honesty. From that night onward, their bond deepened. They walked through parks laughing over simple things. They shared late-night phone calls about movies, childhood stories, and silly dreams. They traveled to small towns in secret, enjoying anonymity and freedom. Yes, the world still whispered. Yes, her mother still frowned. But Benjamin and Camilla learned to drown out the noise with the sound of their own laughter. And in that laughter, they found something neither had ever known before. Peace. Benjamin and Camilla's relationship had stood against whispers, stares, and her family's doubts. What began as laughter in a grocery store aisle had blossomed into a love neither of them could deny. By now it wasn't a question of if they would marry. It was only a matter of when, and when the time came, their wedding was nothing short of grand and elegant, fitting not only their wealth but the depth of their devotion. The day of their union began beneath a golden sky, the air shimmering with the promise of celebration. Guests from across the globe arrived at the venue, a huge cathedral decorated with tall stained glass windows and chandeliers dripping with crystal. Outside, sleek black cars lined the entrance carrying important people, business leaders, artists, and family members dressed in their finest. Security was tight. Photographers waited at the gates, and the world watched with excitement. Benjamin stood tall at the altar in a tailored black tuxedo. His broad frame filled the space, his face glowing with both nerves and joy. He looked every bit the confident man he had become, though his heart pounded with childlike eagerness. When Camilla appeared, the room stilled. She glided down the aisle in a gown of white satin and lace, her veil shimmering with delicate embroidery, her beauty glowing beyond description. Gasps filled the cathedral, not of mockery but of awe. The whispers that once mocked now turned to admiration. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears as he watched her approach. He could hardly breathe. She wasn't just beautiful, she was his. And in her smile he knew she felt the same. The ceremony was rich with tradition. Vows were exchanged, rings slid onto fingers, promises sealed with shaking voices and glistening eyes. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Benjamin pulled Camilla close and kissed her, his hand resting gently against her cheek. Cheers erupted, echoing off the high cathedral ceilings. They were no longer two people battling whispers and doubts. They were one. The celebration that followed was a dazzling display of elegance, held in a grand ballroom lined with golden curtains and sparkling chandeliers. The reception glittered with richness. Tables were decorated with fresh roses, fine china, and candelabras. A live orchestra filled the air with music, while waiters in crisp uniforms served fancy dishes. Benjamin and Camilla entered hand in hand, greeted by thunderous applause. All eyes followed them, but now those eyes glowed with admiration. They danced their first dance beneath a canopy of falling petals. Benjamin moved with surprising grace, guiding Camilla across the floor. She laughed softly, her hand on his chest, her eyes never leaving his. "Do you realize how many people are watching us?" he whispered, a playful grin tugging at his lips. "Let them watch," she whispered back. "We're writing our own story." As the evening unfolded, speeches were made. Friends spoke of Camilla's warmth, her laughter, her loyalty. Others spoke of Benjamin's generosity, his kindness, and the joy he brought to those around him. Even Camilla's father, once hesitant, rose with a glass in hand. His voice shook with emotion as he said, "I once doubted this man, but I see now why my daughter chose him. He makes her shine, and that is all a father could want." Applause followed, and for the first time Benjamin saw acceptance in the man's eyes. The mother sat quietly, her lips pressed tight, but even she could not deny the truth before her. Her daughter was happy, glowing, and deeply loved. The night stretched on with laughter, music, and dancing. Cameras flashed, capturing moments that would fill magazines and headlines the next day. But for Benjamin and Camilla, none of that mattered. They were in their own world, a world built not on appearances but on laughter and love. After the celebration faded and the guests left, Benjamin and Camilla started a new chapter together. They traveled widely, exploring the world not as billionaire and heiress but as husband and wife. They walked hand in hand through Parisian streets, shared gelato in Rome, laughed under lanterns in Tokyo. But even at home, in the quiet of their estate, their love thrived. Benjamin often cooked, still disastrously, often burning toast or oversalting pasta. Camilla would laugh until her sides hurt, swooping in to rescue dinner. They hosted gatherings filled with warmth and joy, their home echoing with laughter from friends and family. And when the world outside grew loud with gossip or criticism, they closed their doors and found peace in each other's arms. Their marriage became a living example. To those who doubted love based on appearances, they stood as proof that true love was deeper than the surface. To those who believed wealth was the only glue, they showed that laughter and kindness were stronger. To those who whispered of impossibility, they became a song of possibility. Years later, when people spoke of Benjamin and Camila, they no longer spoke of his size or her beauty. They spoke of their laughter, of the way he looked at her as if she were the only woman in the world, of the way she defended him, stood by him, and chose him despite the world's judgment. Their story spread, inspiring many. Headlines once cruel now celebrated them. The love that defied the odds. From whispers to cheers, a billionaire's love story. And Benjamin often said, whenever asked the secret of their lasting bond, "It was never about how we looked. It was about how we laughed. Camila gave me joy and I gave her honesty. That's love. That's all it ever needed to be." Camila would smile at those words, slip her hand into his and whisper, "Always," and indeed, it was always. Benjamin was once the billionaire nobody wanted, but with Camila by his side, he became the man everyone admired. Not for his money, but for the love that shone so brightly in his life. Together, they proved that true happiness isn't found in appearances or wealth, but in laughter shared, kindness given, and love that chooses you every single day. And in each other they found not just a partner, but a forever home.